What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel for another review. Today we are taking a brief look at 28 Years Later, the long-awaited sequel to the previous films in this franchise, first 28 Days Later, which I believe came out in the year 2000, and then its sequel 28 Weeks Later, which came out in 2007. This was one of my most anticipated films of the year because we have Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, the pair that wrote and directed the original, returning to make this film, which is the first in a trilogy, supposedly. No idea if that's going to follow through or not, but that's the plan. I'll start by saying, while it's not necessary that you watch the previous two films in order to understand this one, it's definitely helpful to give you an idea of where the starting point was for this story. An outbreak of a virus that I believe they call the Rage virus. And as you might imagine, this film is set 28 years into the future after the original outbreak that took place in Great Britain, which is now under quarantine. No one leaves, no one comes in unless you're a moron. The entire mainland is completely overrun with the infected, although there are still small pockets of humans living and surviving. The characters that we follow in this film are isolated to a small island that is connected to the mainland by a small bridge that is only traversable during low tide. Our protagonist is Spike, played by Alfie Williams, and we also are introduced to his parents, played by Jodie Comer and Aaron Taylor Johnson. Now, I'm just going to come out and say it. This movie is nothing like the trailer. You know, with the eerie poem reading, talking about British soldiers marching through South Africa, all that hideous imagery and creepy atmosphere. You would think, based on that trailer, that you're going to get a very tense, wall-to-wall roller coaster with nonstop infected action and horror. And those things are present in pockets of this film, but it is a vastly different experience than I think most people are expecting. This film is all over the map in terms of pacing, story consistency, and tone. The first act essentially follows Spike as he enters the mainland with his father in almost an initiation ritual. He has come of age and now must, slay his first infected. But in a series of events that I'm not going to get into, it eventually turns into a story about him, Spike, taking his mother out onto the mainland in search of a doctor who might be able to help her because she has a condition that is causing her to have constant amnesia, headaches, confusion. There are gory sequences in which the characters have to run from infected, have to fight the infected, and then it'll jump into an SNL skit sequence in which one character becomes the butt of a joke for 5 minutes straight. And then it goes right back to the serious stuff. And the last 5 minutes are a thing of their own, and I'm not going to get into detail, but it does not mesh with the rest of the film at all. I really enjoyed those first two films, and say what you want about this one for being bold and going in a different direction, but it is never as scary, intense, or fear-inducing as those other two films. Like, when you see a group of infected in those other movies, you instantly feel the threat. In this one, the characters will make a loud noise that attracts some infected. They'll kill a couple of them or just run and hide for a few minutes, and then they're fine. It doesn't feel like the threat is as present as it should, especially considering the fact that 28 years have passed, and that's 28 years of basically the entire mainland being conquered by these things. I feel that there are way too many plot holes, maybe not plot holes, but things that aren't explained to us that should be explained to us in order to keep us immersed in this world. For instance, in the original film, Britain was quarantined with the idea that the infected would starve and die off. And in this movie, they're seen hunting animals, eating, scavenging, thriving. I mean, they've formed an entire social hierarchy, and that's something that we've never seen before. And it's not that I needed a detailed explanation of it, but the rules are changing clearly, and we're not given any context as to how or why that might have happened. Now, everybody's favorite chaotician would probably say life finds a way, and I understand that there are loopholes and things that you could use scientifically to explain why the infected have changed. It's a virus, after all. Viruses mutate. But it's hard for me to buy into the world and the changes that are made in the world if you don't give me anything to grasp onto to explain it. I do like the gritty, indie, low-budget feel that shooting on an iPhone provides. Granted, I don't think that's the future of cinema or anything. It's just something that distinctly gave the original 28 Days Later its own feel, and I'm glad that Danny Boyle stuck to that style of filmmaking. It just makes all the close-up shots and the editing feel unique, feel in your face, and that's why when the infected are chasing the characters, there is some tension. And the connective tissue that forms the beating heart that almost saves this movie is the mother-son relationship between Isla, Jodie Comer's character, and Spike. It's very endearing, and there's a point towards the third act, a scene, that brought out a lot of powerful emotion, and I wish the rest of the movie felt tonally consistent with that, because it was very well executed, but it just doesn't mesh with everything else that's happened beforehand and what's about to happen in the last 5 minutes or so of the movie. Jodie Comer is excellent in this role, and I'd like to dole out some praise to Alfie Williams, too, who I believe is giving us his debut performance in this movie. Very impressive for his age, and given the fact that he doesn't have any other films on his resume. Aaron Taylor Johnson, on the other hand, is not in the movie as much as you might expect given his placement in the trailer as well as his name being slapped onto the film. It's really difficult to pinpoint my issues with the movie because there are individual scenes and set pieces that I think are excellent, and obviously some of this emotion with the lead two characters did work for me. It's just these tonal inconsistencies and the fact that the movie feels almost directionless for a while until it finally decides what it wants to do, and then it introduces Ralph Fiennes' character, who I also found very compelling, but he's kind of just shoehorned into this movie that never truly understands how it wants to deliver its themes to you. And I just learned this recently, but supposedly this is actually the first film in a trilogy of movies that are following this storyline. I have no idea if they'll follow through on that, given the fact that the success of this one will largely dictate whether or not that's possible. Could just be a rumor, but from what I've read, Cillian Murphy is slated to return as his character later on in the trilogy, so there are things that still have me interested to see where Danny Boyle and Alex Garland take this story, but it's never a great sign when the first film in a trilogy feels like a lot of setup, feels largely directionless, has no tonal consistency, and although the last 5 minutes are a very small segment of what is a 2-hour film, I have to say they were so annoying and out of place that they almost killed my anticipation to see where the story goes in the next film. And it's easy to say, well, you could always just shave off those last 5 minutes when you stream it and pretend they don't exist, but I'm sure the next movie is going to open with a continuation to what is an absolutely horrendous and out of place scene. And that's the bad taste that's left in my mouth. So when I'm this mixed on a film and teetering back and forth on whether or not I would give it a thumbs up, I'm tempted to just hold off on giving it a score and rewatching it before I give you my final thoughts. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like this is a movie that I don't really have the drive to rewatch. I think you can wait for streaming. I'm going to give 28 Years Later 2.5 stars. Not a terrible film by any means, but one with an identity crisis, and I don't think it lives up to the expectations that are set up by the first two films. I think the first one is pretty well beloved. Quite a bit of mixed reactions that I've read based on 28 Weeks Later. I remember that one fondly as well, even though it's not as good as the original. So those are my thoughts on what I'm sure is going to be a very polarizing movie experience. Critics are loving it. I'm sure audiences are going to be totally split down the middle, and I've already seen some people on forums and Letterboxd saying things like, it's not a bad movie, it's just not what people are expecting. And I take issue with that statement because I'm happy to have my expectations subverted and for the film to be different than what I was expecting it to be. But the problem is it just feels like a mess. Pick a direction for your story, pick a tone for your story, and stick to it. And this movie was all over the map and on both counts. And worst of all, it just doesn't feel like a complete story, and I need some sort of fulfillment, even if it's the first of 3 chapters. As always, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe while you're at it. If you want to see more content like this, I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.